How's it going, everyone? Great Say Geek here, and welcome back for another impressions video for Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 2. So, I actually like this episode a lot more than the previous episode, but that isn't saying too much because I really didn't like the first episode that much. There are some things that I did not like in this episode, but overall I think there are actually more things I liked than disliked, which has been a first in the show for me since back with Season 1. Just like the last episode, there will be spoilers in this video as we talk through the episode. Again, this is not necessarily a review of the episode, but a brief summary of it and my impressions after watching it. Again, I am not a lore expert and won't pretend to be. I know a decent bit of lore, but I apologize if I get some things wrong. So let's go ahead and begin going through the episode. Episode 2 opens up with an up-close shot of Mount Doom erupting as it transitions to a map of Middle-earth. Black vine-like tendrils stretch across the map from Mount Doom and focuses on Khazad-dûm. In a market in Khazad-dûm, Prince Durin and Disa kind of go back and forth about being outcasted and how Durin should talk to the king. Disa feels a rumbling in the mountain, and eventually great stones collapse. The mountain shakes, and the dwarves get cut off from the light. We then get Galadriel in a scene which appears to be a dream or vision. She is kind of honoring a statue of her brother when Celebrimbor appears. They have a conversation about Celebrimbor receiving a visitor. Everything grows dark, and some seeds Galadriel had planted grow and attack Celebrimbor, in which he tells her, "Are these not the seeds you planted?" The scene cuts to Galadriel in a council with Gil-galad and some other elves talking about how to handle Adar and the whereabouts of Sauron. But Gil-galad realizes something is up with Galadriel, who is wondering if Sauron is actually still in Mordor. She tells Gil-galad that Sauron wants to bend the wills of people using rings and needs Celebrimbor. Gil-galad tells her that Celebrimbor and his crafts are safe in Eregion. We then cut to maybe a vision that Galadriel has of Halbrand being outside of a tower during a rainstorm. She continues to talk to Gil-galad about an evil closing in on Celebrimbor. They talk about how the rings have enhanced the ability of foresight, giving glimpses of the future. Galadriel wishes to go to Eregion, but Gil-galad is concerned that Sauron has already gained influence over Galadriel. Galadriel suggests that she goes with someone else. We then jump to Eregion, where a messenger informs Halbrand that Celebrimbor will not grant him entry, but refuses to leave. The messenger reports back to Celebrimbor, who states basically that he will leave eventually. He had also promised Galadriel not to treat with him again. He is eagerly awaiting news from Lindon, but then we see that Gil-galad's messengers are dead and the message destroyed. We then jump to Rhûn, where we see a dark wizard, and I'm not sure who he is supposed to be. My first thought was maybe this is who will eventually become Khamûl, but he could just be another lord or sorcerer. The weird lady from Season 1, I'm not sure who she is or what they ended up doing with this character, but she pops up, and they talk about the Istar wandering the desert with the two halflings. The dark sorcerer sends a masked Easterling to find and destroy the Istar before he can control his power. The Easterling asks to give them the curse upon their flesh to do this, so I was curious about that. We jump to the desert where the wizard and halflings, where Nori tries to come up with names for the wizard. He eventually says something that is actually pretty dumb. He says, "No one can give you a name. It is yours already. It is who you are. And when you hear it, you hear your heart glow." It seemed a little political to me, with people today wanting to name themselves and call themselves what feels right to them versus, what your parents, or in this wizard's case, what your creators gave you. It was just a really weird line that seemed very out of place and kind of just seemed a little bit political in there. Anyways, though, moving on past that, the Easterling group ends up catching up with the party, but they hide, so they slip away. They end up changing course through a more treacherous path in the desert that has less water and resources. King Durin seems to be trying to find a way to repair the sun shafts into Khazad-dûm, and Disa, along with a few other dwarves, end up singing to do I don't know what to try and bring the light back, but it doesn't work. And that might be something that was in the first season that it kind of explains why she was singing. I don't know what the goal is or what would have happened just from singing. But maybe some of you guys can let me know in the comments. Disa then talks to King Durin about speaking to his son in an attempt to bring them together. We then jump to Prince Durin, who is working in the mine and gets basically hazed by the other miners. which then Prince Durin afterwards sits for a meal with Disa, and Disa speaks to him about apologizing to the king. Again, jumping away from Khazad-dûm, Galadriel tries to get aid from Elrond, but he is still hanging on to a grudge and refuses to help her. Elrond then goes and speaks with Círdan, who ends up convincing Elrond to help. Círdan talks about the power of the rings and tells Elrond he is wise, but to not be blind to what good the rings can do for the elves. Back in the desert, the wizard collapses from probably heat stroke or dehydration, but don't worry, one of the halflings happens to locate a very convenient well a few yards away and gathers water for them. Of course, a bell is on the well, and it attracts the attention of the Easterlings when it's used. The wizard also finds what appears to be the staff from his dreams that he was having. The Easterlings attack, and the wizard summons a giant tornado, but ends up not being able to control it, and it sucks up the Easterlings and also the halflings. The staff also ends up getting destroyed in the process, which is probably showing that it's not the actual staff that he was supposed to find. We jump back to Eregion, where Celebrimbor has created Ithildine, which is basically the magic writing that we saw on the doors of Moria in Lord of the Rings. We then see the shot of Halbrand outside Eregion, which Galadriel seemed to see early in the episode. Celebrimbor speaks to him and is convinced by Halbrand to let him in. Celebrimbor sits with Halbrand in the forge and speak about how the rings work. Halbrand ends up telling Celebrimbor that he is not who he says he is. He also tells Celebrimbor to make rings for men, and basically tells him that he's a messenger of the Valar. Celebrimbor doesn't believe him, but then we have a scene where Halbrand disappears and ends up reappearing by emerging from fire and cloud from the forge that's in the room, and announces himself as Anatar. We jump back to Gil-galad, who orders Galadriel to go to Eregion, but informs her that Elrond will be going and leading the journey, which Galadriel did not seem too thrilled about. We then go to Prince Durin, who receives an invitation from Celebrimbor to go to Eregion before cutting to the credits. So that was kind of a really brief rundown. Obviously, I ran through that in just a few minutes, left out a lot of information. So, go watch the episode yourself, right, if you want to see every little detail. Now, like I said, I think I ended up liking this episode better than the first episode. The reason being is, like I said, there was a lot more of the dwarves in this episode, and I think the dwarves are one of the few things about this show that I actually like. Yes, they have their own race swapping issues and things like that for the sake of checking boxes, but overall, the dwarves are actually pretty well designed, and I think I enjoy hearing their dialogue and their back and forth more than probably any other race in this show. I also actually really liked the Celebrimbor and Halbrand stuff. Obviously, before this episode aired, we were kind of wondering and kind of making fun of how Halbrand, who has seen Celebrimbor before and is now appearing to him as Anatar, but looks exactly the same, but now with long hair and pointy ears. So I think I liked in this episode where, obviously, through the dialogue between Halbrand and Celebrimbor, Halbrand tells him, hey, Celebrimbor basically alludes, like, what are you, like a messenger from the Valar? And so Sauron kind of plays off of that, right? And ends up disappearing because Celebrimbor is like opening a window and the storm or something disappears, and then obviously, right, comes out of the fire and announces himself as Anatar. So it was kind of nice to see how he actually ended up revealing himself to Celebrimbor, where I actually could believe that dialogue of tricking Celebrimbor and be like, look, I'm not who I say I am because I'm actually a messenger of the Valar. This is my true form. And then Celebrimbor obviously believing that. This was also actually probably Sauron's, from what I've seen in the show, probably the coolest thing that he's done. Which isn't saying a whole lot because, like my problem with the first episode, Sauron's not that impressive in this show so far. I think the actor does a good job for Halbrand / Sauron, but I think just writing wise, there's a lot that I don't like with him. There wasn't really, outside of that, there really wasn't a whole lot that was like, wow, this is really cool. I think I liked this episode more just because there wasn't as much in this episode that made me mad. So I could tolerate it more, if that makes sense. Like you get the dwarves were cool. Sauron did some cool stuff. I like the dialogue between him and Celebrimbor. But outside of that, it's kind of just okay. It's kind of just okay. And we'll have to see with the third episode how this continues. So far, I will give this season credit so far. I have not wanted to just like flat out stop watching it. By this time, by the second episode of the first season, I was already checked out pretty much. So the fact that I'm still going with it is at least saying something for season 2, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. But anyways, that's just kind of my basic, simple thoughts on this episode. Obviously, as we get further into the season, and then of course at the end of the season, we'll be able to kind of go back and review the season and just talk about everything of how it played together. But let me know what you guys think. Did you like episode 2 better than episode 1? Did you not like it more? Again, what are some of the things you love about the show? Do you not like the show? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'll be watching episode 3 very shortly. Hopefully I'll have the breakdown of that posted very soon, so keep an eye out for that. But again, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the next video.